Hey guys, Alex here with Paragon Performance. Today we're going to be showing you how to install the Kooks headers on your C8 Z06. These are a similar design to OEM, being that 4:2:1 collector style, but they are refined by tube lengths and tube diameters to give you that little bit of power pickup. Let's get to this install. All right, so we're gonna start actually on the passenger side, walk you through step by step on that process of removing the OEM unit and replacing it with the Kooks unit. We're gonna walk through that process on that side because that is the more challenging side to do and does take some patience. The driver's side, we will walk you through some of the key points, but honestly, if you make it through the passenger side and haven't thrown any wrenches across the shop, the driver's side is a breeze. Let's get to it. All right, so the first thing we need to do is get this cross brace out of the way. To do that, we are going to unclip our evap line from the cross brace. We are going to unplug the mag ride connector here and undo the wire retention clip from the underside. Then with a T40 Torx bit, we are going to remove the 4 screws holding the cross brace in place and take the cross brace out. All right, so next we are going to undo our O2 sensor connector here. We're just gonna tuck that out of the way for right now. Then we will remove the 10mm bolt holding the bracket for the wire harness side of the O2 sensor connector. That will get tucked down underneath the intake manifold here. Then we are gonna remove this evap line. There's gonna be 2 10mm bolts that hold it to the intake manifold, as well as this quick disconnect location and another one here just after the bend. And then we will remove that line out of the car. All right, so with the evap line here, we're gonna undo it from the clip that is down here. You can either remove the clip itself from the body or unclip the hose out of the clip if you would like. And then using your method of choice, I just use a couple zip ties. We're gonna tie it up out of the way here over to your hatch support bracket. Next, we're going to undo this other wire retention clip for the mag ride connector. And we're just going to tuck this in this cavity underneath here. Remove the O2 sensor from the exhaust manifold. You can use a 22mm wrench or an O2 sensor socket. And set this aside somewhere safe. Now we're going to remove the 3 fasteners that hold these 2 heat shields on the flange here. You've got one 10mm down here on a stud, and then 2 10mm bolts, one on top and one down here on the side. This one on the side is a little hard to see and a little fun to get to, but it can be done. And these just lift out. All right, so next we are going to remove this ignition coil heat shield here. Keep in mind when working in and around this header There are some seams in this header, and those heat shield overlaps are very sharp. So just keep that in mind while you're doing it, because they will get you. But on the ignition coil cover here, there are going to be 4 8mm screws, 2 up top, 2 down below here. Just using a ratchet wrench works best. Okay, and then you will need to fish this cover out, being mindful to not scratch the valve cover. All right, so next we're going to remove the 3 ignition coils here towards the back side of the engine. They all do have a safety clip on them for the electrical connector that we will need to undo and unplug them. And then we will be using a 8mm ratchet wrench, take the retaining bolt that holds them on, and the rear 2 come out pretty easy. The front one here, or well, the rear one here will need to be kind of pushed down under the manifold and pulled out, just a little tighter clearance area there. So and next we're going to remove this 10mm bolt that holds these coolant lines in place. Gives us more freedom of being able to shift these around while pulling that manifold out. All right, so next we are going to remove the 3 nuts here on the manifold to cat flanges here. And then we will leave this one here just threaded on finger tight. They are a 15mm, and you'll just have to figure out what combination of tools you have that allows you to get all of these out. The top 2 aren't too bad, but the bottom one is a little tricky to get to. So and just like that, we're done up top for right now. We need to go underneath and disconnect the manifold from the head. All right, so we're underneath the vehicle here. We're going to be working through this little triangle shaped hole. Keeping in mind the edges of this subframe stuff can be sharp, but we are going to be removing the 5 13mm bolts here that hold the manifold to the head. It is not uncommon for these to be difficult to remove from the time you break them free till they're pretty much out. All right, so we are pretty much ready to remove this manifold. We do still have the 1 nut here holding it on. We will have this coolant hose here towards the back side of the car that we will need to tuck under the manifold once we start removing it. That just gives us a little bit more clearance. Keeping in mind that your valve cover, and if you have a red intake manifold, are painted as well. So we are trying our absolute best and as much patience as possible to try to not scratch any of these components. You can, little tech tip, dent the heat shielding here on this very back runner where it bends and goes underneath. That will give you a little bit more tolerance between the valve cover and this inboard wall here, just to make it a little bit easier to get it out. And then keep in mind too, we have all this stuff back here for the oil reservoir that we can't move. So it makes it a little tight and basically forces you to have to kind of rotate the manifold up. So these do still have sharp edges, so be careful of that. We're going to pick up on it, take our nut off. Okay. We are going to gently pull it forward and off the studs on the cat flange. And then we can begin to tip the manifold. Now you can kind of see what I mean by the coolant hose. There is a stud sticking out of the side of the wall down here, so just be careful with that. But we need to tuck this underneath here. And you'll probably have to push down on it a little bit here and there as you're coming up and out. But this is the area down here where you would dent that manifold cover. And you just play the Lego block game of fish it out. And just like that, it's out of there. All right, so we have our Kooks header here. They provide you with some stage 8 fasteners. This is obviously provided in twice this quantity. I only have enough out here for one manifold, but I just want to show you how that works because it's hard to show you on the car. So basically on these, they have the hex and then they have a slot in them. That slot is actually designed for one of these E-clips. So this will go on here and it can be clocked in several different positions. And the clip actually will go on and snap it into place. You may need to use some pliers to snap it on there. But the point of that is to basically lock the fastener in place so it can't completely walk free. Now if you notice, there are some straight ones and there are some angled ones. The angled ones are going to be used on the 2 outboard locations and the center, because they actually kind of just hook up and over the manifold here on these outside 2 locations. That's how they will be when they're installed to limit them from being able to come undone. This furthest back mounting hole here, when this actually goes on, it will need to be clocked down here on the bottom and then install your clips. Now for these straight ones, these are going to go on these lower locations. And when the bolt is installed, you will clock it to try to get this edge as close to that runner there, and same with this side, as that gives you that limitation of it being able to come undone. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get this new manifold slid down into place here, keeping in mind the painted surfaces, as it's just about as snug of a fit for the new one as it was for the old one. And just like that, we head underneath to get our gasket installed and our bolts tightened down to the cylinder head. So we're going to grab our gasket here and our stage 8 bolts to mount this header to the cylinder head. You can fish the gasket up through from the underside. It's a little easier than doing it from the top, especially when you got to put the bolts in anyway. And like always hand start these bolts. Make sure they are started by hand and will screw in fairly easily, just so we don't cross thread any of them into the head. But we're going to start on the outside 2 bolts here first, because those are kind of our alignment points. Then we'll install the 3 in the center. And of course, torque all the bolts to the factory specifications. All right, so we've got everything on the bottom down there buttoned up to the cylinder head, all the stage 8 locking fasteners installed as well. Next, we are going to install the other 2 nuts here and tighten down to factory spec the header to cat flange. From there, you're just going to reinstall everything in kind of the reverse order that you took it apart. But for now, we're going to step over here to the driver's side, go over the couple key things that you need to be doing during that process. It's much easier, but we just want to review it with you, so we're giving you as much space as possible to get that manifold out as well. All right, so moved over here to the driver's side. A lot of the process is the same as far as actually unbolting the header from the engine, the O2 sensor, all of that's the same. You will need to remove the cross brace, the same as the other side. Keep in mind the mag ride connector that needs to come out of there. We are also going to have one 10mm bolt and a wire retention clip here on the intake manifold to basically get this harness loose. And we will need to remove, there's a little kind of S-shaped catch can or PCV hose here that we'll need to take off there, just quick connect on both locations. And then we will take this harness and tuck it down under the manifold, between the manifold and the valve cover. The coil cover, ignition coils, all of that's exactly the same as what's on the other side as well. And you have a lot more space, so it is much easier to get this manifold out. And there you have it. And there you guys have it. Pretty simple install. Now go and enjoy that little bit of sound pickup and power pickup on your Z06. As always, like, subscribe, and comment. We'll see you guys next time.